Good morning, everyone. We are reading in Book 2, Canto 5, and we reached page 166, line 557. Aurobindo has been showing us the life of the ephemeral earthly creature, our daily life on the lower life level. And he says this is only a stage through which we pass. If that were our permanent state, then yes, our mind would be quite right to think of all this as an illusion, matter that chanced to read itself by mind, inconscience, monstrously engendering soul. We think that we have a soul, we may even feel that we have a soul, but it seems to have no place in this material world. So we can read on from there. Varadarajan, would you start?
At times, all unreal and remote. We seem to live in a fiction of our thoughts, years from sensations, fanciful traveler's tale, or part on the film of the recording brain, a figment or circumstance in cosmic sleep, a somnambulist walking under the moon, an image of ego pressed to an ignorant dream, counting the moment of a spectral time, in a false perspective of effect and cause. Trusting a specious thought of world space, we drift incessantly from scene to scene, whither it knows not to what travelers verge. All here is dream or doubtfully witness, but who the dreamer is and whence he is still unknown.
Thank you. This is a way of experiencing the world. Some of you may have come across the book, I think it's called The Somnambulists. It's a book about the history of science by Arthur Koestler. And he points out how human beings seem to have been sleepwalking and discovering by accident knowledge about the world, and gradually that gets built up over the ages into a more coherent picture. But who the dreamer is, who is that sleepwalker who is guiding this whole process? And does any of all this really exist? If it's a dream, who is dreaming it? Or there's a different way of looking at it. Would you read the next passage, please? I've forgotten your name. George, would you read the next bit? Or the world is real? Yeah.
All the world is real, but ourselves too small, insufficient for that of our stage. A thin life curve crossed the canvas of the orbit of a soulless universe, and in the belly of the sparse rolling mass, a mind looks out from a small causal globe and wonders what itself and all things are. And yet, to some internal subjective side that strangely has formed in matter's sightless stuff, a pointing ledge, minute of little self, takes figure as a world being's conscious base. Such is our scene in the half-light below. This is the sign of matter's infinite. This, the real purport of the picture shown, the science, the giant's measurer of her field. As she pores on the record of her close survey and
mathematizes
her huge external world, the reason bound within the circle of sense, for in the thoughts broad, impalpable exchange, a speculator in tenuous, vast ideas, abstractions in the void we know not with what firm values for its base.
Thank you. So perhaps after all, the world is real, but we ourselves are so tiny in comparison with this vast material universe. We are not developed enough to really play a part on this mighty stage. If we look at the world as we know it, the cosmos as we know it, there's just this thin curve of life on the surface of our material earth. And it's orbiting around and around its own axis, around the sun, and the whole galaxy is moving. And yet this whole universe seems to be soulless, purely material. But somewhere in the very middle, in the belly of this sparse, rolling mass, scattered with suns and stars and asteroids, somewhere our mind looks out from this little casual globe that could have formed by chance, and we are wondering about ourselves and about everything else. And yet, says Aurobindo, to some inner sight, interned subjective sight, some self-awareness that has formed within us, strangely has formed in the unconscious stuff of matter, there's a tiny little point of self-awareness. Pointillage, a little tiny, there are many of these tiny little spots. This almost seems, at least to this subjective sight, that this is the conscious basis for this whole world existence. Are we the only conscious beings in all this? We tiny little creatures? This seems to be the sign of the infinity of matter. This is the strange picture that appears to science, this gigantic figure of our times, science, measuring her field of perception. And then she looks carefully at all the measurements she has made, puts all this into mathematical relationships. She's using reason, the power of deduction and induction, based on the sense impressions. It's bound within the circle of perception given to her by the senses, or the tools that she's made to increase the range of her sense perceptions. And there's some speculation also in our thought. We speculate, it might be like this or it might be like that. Vast theories, but we don't know what they are based on. These are just abstractions in the emptiness, and we don't know what value they have. Probably they don't have any firm value on which they are based, the theories of science. But there's something which claims to be reliable. Would you read it, Christy, please?
Only religion in this bankruptcy presents its dubious riches to our hearts. Our science and provision checks and remain. Our poverty shall there have its revenge. Our spirits depart, discarding a futile life into the blank unknown, or with them take death's passport into immortality.
As we can rely on science or we can rely on religion. Neither of them seem to be very reliable. Religion promises us if we do certain things in this world, we'll reap the rewards in the beyond. Our poverty shall there have its revenge. So our spirits will leave this world, dropping off this futile little life. Where are we going? Into the blank unknown. And perhaps we have this passport with us that promises us entry into the immortal state. Patricia.
Yet was this only a provisional scheme, false appearance, sketched by limiting sense, mind's insufficient self-deceit, an early attempt, a first experiment. This was a toy to amuse the infant earth. But knowledge ends not in these surface powers that live upon a ledge in ignorance and dare not look into the dangerous depth, or to stare upward, measuring the unknown. There is a deeper seeing from within, and when we have left these small purlieus of mind, a greater vision meets us on the heights, in the luminous wideness of the Spirit's gaze. At last there wakes in us a witness soul that looks at truths unseen and scans the unknown, then all assumes a new and marvelous face. The world quivers with a godlight at its core. In time's deep heart, high purposes move and live. Life's borders crumble and join infinity. This broad, confused, yet rigid scheme becomes a magnificent imbroglium of the nights. Again, a work ambiguously divine.
Thank you. Anybody can tell us what an imbroglio is? Lela? Yeah, a very complicated story, a plot with many ins and outs, a tangle.
Thread, you can translate it as a thread story, fall into the thread in the water.
It catches hold of you and you're stuck and you can't find your way out of the maze. Yeah.
You say something to people and they fall into it and they are fake.
This reference to the provisional scheme, this, is it religion?
No, it's this little life, the way things are.
What is it
So, a purlieu, the purlieus. At the moment we are within the purlieus of Savitri, the territory, the area. At the event, and we are also within the small purlieus of mind, within the borderlines or the walls. When we can move out, then a greater vision meets us on the heights.
How to connect us with greater vision?
Ah.
No one wants to stuck in one place just with the artificial visions of fear.
Yes. So I think that's what Aurobindo wants to show us in this poem, is the way out. And that in this universe that we are living in, there are many levels, and we are inevitably moving from one to the next, but we can also consciously decide to do that and participate in this evolving process. So the next lines are quite illuminating about that. Would you?
Our seekings are short-lived experiments made by a wordless and inscrutable power, testing its distance from inconscient mind to meet its luminous self of truth and bliss. It peers at the real truth, the apparent form. It labors in our mortal mind and sense, amid the figures of the ignorant, and the simple pictures drawn by word and thought. It seeks the truth to which all things point. It looks for the source of light with vision's lens. It works to find the doer of all works, the unfelt self within whom is the God, the unknown self above whom is the good.
Yes, thank you. This is the true meaning of our life. We can't help seeking for knowledge, for more, for bliss. And these seekings are just short-lived experiments that are being made, he says, by a wordless and inscrutable power, a mysterious, silent power, which is trying out the way in which it can escape, the ways out, the issues from inconscient night, the unconsciousness of matter and material mind. Something within us is trying to find its way out. It wants to discover, or it will eventually discover, its luminous self of truth and bliss. It's the true conscious being within us. But at first, it's trapped in this inconscient night and has very limited means of testing its ways out. It tries this, it tries that. So it's trying to find out what is real, but all it has to go on are the apparent forms shown to us by our senses. That power is laboring, trying hard to find out reality through our mortal mind and sense. Here we are amidst all the figures, the images shown to us by the ignorance, these symbol pictures presented to us by word and thought. But that power is actually searching for the truth to which all these figures are pointing. No? It's looking for the source of light. What is the source of consciousness? But what have we got to look with? We only have this power of material vision. What we're looking for is the source of the consciousness that allows us to see. We are involved in activity. We can't help being involved in activity. And through our activities, perhaps we can find eventually the power that is doing everything. Perhaps we can find the unfelt self within us who is guiding all this process. And then we will be able to contact that unknown self above, the truth to which all figures point. So is that possible? Are we going to be able to do that? Let's see what he says next.
All is not here blinded, nature's task. The word, wisdom watches us from on high, the witness sanctioning her will and works. And I, unseen in the unseen lost. There is an influence from the light above. There are thoughts remote and sealed eternities. The mystic drives the stars and suns in this passage from a deaf, unknown force to struggling consciousness and transient breath. A mighty supernature waits on time. The world is our, and we now think and see. Our lives are deeper mystery than we have dreamed. Our minds are starters in the race to God. Our souls deputed selves offering supreme. Across the cosmic fields through narrow lanes, asking a scanty dole from fortune's hands. And garbed in beggar's robes, there walks the one.
Thank you. All is not here a blinded nature's task. It's not just unconscious evolution of material nature. There's a higher power watching, a word, a wisdom. There's a witness watching and saying yes or no to what nature wills and does. We don't see that eye, or perhaps occasionally we may get a glimpse of it, but it's there watching us in this apparently unseeing vastness of material space. There's an influence from a light above. There are distant thoughts, sealed eternities, sealed to us for now, but there's a mystic motive driving these material stars and suns that make up our universe. We are going through a passage. He called it earlier on a stage. A passage. In this passage from a deaf, unknowing force, the unconscious nature, to perhaps the stage we are in at the moment, struggling consciousness, transient breath, short-lived lives. Something else is waiting. A mighty supernature is waiting for the time to be ripe. This world is other than we now think and see. It's not a purely material scene. Our lives are a much deeper mystery than we have imagined. And our minds, our ignorant minds, they are starters in the race to God. We can all participate in this race. Our souls are deputed selves of the Supreme. We have been sent from the Supreme to participate in this race, in this struggle, in this evolving process. And we don't know it, but here in the cosmic field, there's this beautiful picture, wandering through the narrow lanes like a beggar, just asking a scanty dole, a small gift from Fortune's hands. Will she give or will she not give? Garbed in beggar's robe, there walked the one. And we are those beggars, passing through the narrow lane, waiting to see what Fortune will give us. But it's the one within that wordless and inscrutable power who is guiding the search. Fanny, you've lost the place. Line 654. Even in the theatre of these small lives. You're not too well today. You'll read, Monica.
Even in the theatre of these small lives, we have a secret sweetness of breath.
Breathe.
And your, sorry, my English is not perfect. An urge of miniature divinity, a mystic passion from the wells of God flows through the guarded spaces of the soul, a force that helps supports the suffering earth, an unseen nearness and the hidden joy. There are muffled throbs of laughters under thorns, the murmur of an occult happiness, an exaltation in depths of sleep, a heart of bliss living a world of pain, an infant nursed on nature's covered breast, an infant playing in the magic woods, looking to rapture by the spirit's streams, awaits the hour when we shall turn to his home.
Thank you. So even in this little life, this theatre of these small lives we are living, behind the act, there's a secret sweetness, breathing, keeping it all alive and growing. An urge of miniature divinity. There's this mystic passion, this intensity, thank you, from the wells of God, is flowing through these secret spaces of our souls. And a force that helps is supporting this suffering earth. An unseen nearness, a hidden joy is keeping us all going. We hardly hear them, but there are muffled throbs of laughter's undertone. You know, muffled, we don't, stifled, not properly heard. The murmur of an occult happiness. And in the depths of our sleep of unconsciousness, there is an exaltation, an intense delight. There's a heart of bliss within this world of pain. And this is because of the presence of this child, this infant. When we read of this infant with a capital I, we think of Lord Krishna. That child is being nursed by nature, and he plays in the magic woods. We can't, we might hear his flute in the distance, but we can't catch him. But still, he's calling out, attracting us, fluting to rapture by the Spirit's streams. He is waiting for the hour when we shall wake up and turn to his call. Sorry? By the Spirit's streams? Yes, if we think of Lord Krishna in the forest, and then there are the lovely little rivers beside, it could be, beside the stream.
This muffled drops of laughter's undertone, I think that sometimes there when the divine is laughing when we are
yes.
And the contradiction is so between
yes, for sure.
And then of the divine looks on him.
Yes, and he's just laughing at us. Yeah. And he plays mischief on us also. He plays tricks, not Lord Krishna. Then he laughs at us. Francis.
In
fleshly life is soul that is a spark of God's life. When something breaks through the solid spirit and kindles fire that makes us heartily life. In our body cells, the sick hiding hole that sees and sees in times of pain. Our smallest parts are weak or deeper need. We shall shed.
No, sorry, you've skipped a page.
It is that too the golden messenger from God. The door is cut in the mud wall of sight. After the lowly threshold has both hands, angel study himself in the past, lodged in the newness and clarity of will, the maker of the image of the infinite life. And pity is God, empowering it, sacrifice, in fleshly, sympathy, and tenderness, cast ardent light from the heart's secluded shrine.
Yes, this is so beautiful, no? Here we are in this earthly life, this material life, fleshly life. It's like a robe that's being put on us, an investiture that we have to wear. But within it, there's a soul that is a spark of God. And sometimes that soul breaks through the sordid screen of the fleshly life and kindles a fire that makes us half divine. Even in the cells of our body, of the fleshly body, there sits a hidden power. That wordless and inscrutable power is within every one of our cells and particles. And that hidden power sees what we don't see. And it's planning, long-term planning for eternity. And because of that presence, even our smallest parts have room for deepest needs. Into these smallest parts of the being, the golden messengers can come. It's as if in this fleshly body, this mud wall of our little self, it's a mud wall, so it can be cut. A door gets cut, and these golden messengers, these angels of ecstasy, they have to bow their heads to pass through that little mud door, no? But they do pass through, these angels of ecstasy and self-giving. These are the powers of the soul, and they live there in this innermost sanctuary of dream. There they are at work. They're preparing our divine selves. Pity is there, sacrifice, flashes of sympathy and tenderness cast heaven lights from the heart's secluded shrine, from the home of the soul. Turiya.
Work is done in the deep silences, a glory and wonder of spiritual sense, a laughter is divine and owning the world experiencing the joy, inhabit the mystery of the untouched gods, blurred by time's beats, eternity sleeps in us. In the sealed, hermetic heart, the happy core, hanging behind this outer shade of death, the eternal entity prepared within its matter of divine felicity, its shade of heavenly phenomenon.
Thank you. So this is our hope, no? That the eternal entity is preparing in each one of us its matter of divine felicity, its reign of heavenly phenomenon.
It's funny also pointing out that the silence is involved. What Shraddhavan also mentioned again and again.
Yeah, and she comes, excuse me,
Sorry, yeah?
inhabit the mystery of the untouched gods.
Yes. There's this work is going on, although we don't hear it, these deep inner silences. And there's a glory and wonder of spiritual sense, and a laughter in beauty's everlasting space. These things are inhabiting the mystery of the untouched gulfs, these deep unconscious parts, and they transform. They can to transform world experience into joy. Lulled by time's beats, eternity sleeps in us. This potential of eternity is as if like a child sleeping within us. And the eternal entity is at work, in this tightly sealed heart, but the happy core, the very center where the psychic being is, unmoved behind this outer shape of death, this physical being. The eternal entity is preparing within us its matter of divine felicity, a different kind of matter, and its reign of heavenly phenomenon. So things happen even in our ordinary experience. That comes next. Mihong, will you read?
In our scattering mind of ignorance, a foresight comes of some immense release. Our will leaps towards it, slow and shaking hands. Each part in us desires its absolute. Our thoughts covet the everlasting light. Our strength derives from an omnipotent force, and since from a very God joy the worlds were made, and since eternal beauty asks for form, even here where all is made of beings, thus our hearts are captured by ensnaring shapes. Our very senses blind and secret of bliss. Our error to suffice reality, to force its birth and divine body here, compelling, incarnate in a human form, and breathing in limbs that one can touch and clasp. It's knowledge to rescue an ancient ignorance. It's a savior light, the inconstant river. And when the greater self comes, she light down to feel this image of our transience. All shall be captured by the light, transformed in waves of undreamed ecstasy, shall roll our mind and life and sense and love in a light. Other than this hardly limited human being.
You want to let Jean-Yves go on? You continue.
Our mind and life and sense and life in the life other that is hardly limited human day. The body's tissues free, apotheosized, its cells sustained life with a mortal. This little being of time, this shadow soul, this living what figurehead of darkened spirits, out of his traffic, dedicated dreams shall rise. His shape of person and his evil face are rested of this mortal travesty, like a clay form naked into God, new made in the image of the eternal guest, shall be called to the breast of a wide form, and flaming with a rising touch, in a rose fire of sweet spiritual grace, in the red passion of his infinite chain, quiver, awake, and shatter with ecstasy.
Thank you. Because of that presence within us, even now in our state of skeptic mind of ignorance, there is an aspiration towards the change. Our will is lifting towards it. Slow hands, but they are shaping that future possibility. Each part in us is desiring its absolute, its fulfillment. Our thoughts, our strength, our love of beauty and bliss. And our error, our mistakes and stumblings, they are in a way torturing the reality, but that is to force its birth and divine body here. It's part of the process of bringing about that great transformation, compelling, incarnate in a human form, and breathing in limbs that one can touch and clasp. Its knowledge, the knowledge of that reality, must rescue our ancient ignorance and save the inconscient universe by its savior light. And here again is one of these great prophecies and promises that Sri Aurobindo gives us. When that greater self, our own greater self, comes pouring down on us like an ocean to fill this little human image of our transience, everything shall be captured by delight, transformed. Our mind and life and sense will be rolled in waves of undreamed ecstasy, shall know another light other than this hard, limited human day. And the body's tissues will be apotheosized, divinized. Its cells will bear this metamorphosis, this complete change of form, this little being of time, this shadow soul, this living dwarf figurehead of darkened spirit, out of its traffic in petty dreams shall rise. And it'll be changed. Its whole shape of person, its ego face will be taken away. This mortal travesty, this caricature of its true self. It'll be like a little mud doll, a clay troll, which gets kneaded by divine hands into the form of a god, new made in the image of the eternal guest. It shall be caught to the breast of a white force, and flaming with that paradisal touch in a rose fire of sweet spiritual grace, in the red passion of its infinite change, quiver, awake, shudder with ecstasy. Morgen.
As if reversing the deformation unspelled, release from the flight of magic, the night, renouncing solitude to the end of it, shall learn at last to live and unseen, and seize with marvel the adoring heart, that throws child or the edge of the already, trampling with beauty and delight and love. But first, the spirit's descent realization out of the schism from which our nature grows. The soul must soar, sovereign above the form, inclined to summits beyond mind's heart. Our hearts must form with energy and strength, despise the animal with a cold thought, and kindling the gold time of sacrifice, calling the powers of life, which shall dedicate this credit of our mortal state, make the appealing abode of heaven's descent, offering all depths with their supermade grace, lead the devils with the mystic fires.
Thank you. Yes.
Line 740.
Yes.
But first the spirit's ascending you must achieve.
Yes.
What do you reverse to the spirit?
Well, there's this whole evolutionary process going on. He's been telling us about the level of the little life. And even in that level, the spirit is struggling to find ways out and ways up. And he's giving us the great promise, the wonderful promise of where that's going to lead to. But still we have to achieve that ascent out of the little life first, out of the chasm, that deep hole from which our human nature has evolved. This soul within us must grow stronger. It must be able to fly high like a great bird above the form of the body. And it has to be able to climb above the level of mind, this half sleep of mind. And our hearts, instead of being driven by all these impulses of the little life, they have to become filled with heavenly strength. And this animal being of our outer self has to be surprised by the God hidden within it, the divine being. And when that happens, then our lives can become a constant sacrifice an act of sacrifice. Every action that we do, this is what the message of Sri Krishna in the Gita, no? Kindling that golden tongue of sacrifice, of self-giving, and calling with our aspiration, we're calling down powers of a bright hemisphere, far above this dark hemisphere we live in now. We shall be able to let fall like a used cloak. We'll shed the discredit of our mortal state, our present mortal state, subject to the grip of ignorance and death. Then this deep hole that we have risen up out of, that abysm, we shall turn it into a road down which all the heavenly powers can descend into matter, so that the very depths of our being will become familiar with that wonderful ray from above, and the darkness will be cleaved, cut apart, driven apart by the light of that mystic fire, the fire of divine will and strength. So that's a wonderful close to this canto on the Godheads of the little life. He's shown us the powers that are influencing us in our lower life parts. Yes.
There in line 738.
Yes.
Child Godhead.
The child Godhead. Yes. I think this is my personal interpretation. The mother has painted this child Godhead also in some of the paintings, meditations on Savitri. There's the divine as the divine child, which is growing in all the forms of the universe. It's growing in all the forms of the universe. So it's like an expression of the evolution. It starts small and weak, but it grows stronger and stronger. And of course, that child within us is also the soul. And that infant who's playing in the woods and waking us up to his bliss and youthfulness, eternal youthfulness.
But Shraddhavan, I have a question. Long time I tell my dream when I meet Krishna. My dream is not really a dream, it's some vision. And he give me milk.
He's feeding you.
Dream, and
nourishing you. Wow.
30 years, 88. And now, after 38, it's like river. You tell me maybe 10 years ago in Savitri class, sometimes something coming, but now coming some knowledge, unexpected.
Great.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Why does he use the word gold tower sacrifice?
Yes, well, it's the sacrificial flame, and if it's golden, then it means it's very pure, no? And it's a flame like a tongue. No? That's what carries our sacrifice to the Lord. So King Aswapati has explored that whole realm of the little life, the outer aspect and the inner aspect. And now he's moving on. You'll read, Rita, please.
Adventuring once more in the nether mist, across the dangerous haze, the pregnant stir, he through the astral chaos showed away mid the grey faces of its demon gods, questioned by whispers of its flickering ghost, besieged by sorceries of its fluent force, as one who walks unguided through strange fields, tending he knows not where nor with what hope, he trod a soil that frayed beneath his feet, and journeyed in stone strength to a forgotten end. His trail behind him was a vanishing line of glimmering points in a vague immensity. A bodiless murmur travelled at his side, in the wooded gloom, complaining against light. A huge obstruction, its immobile heart, the watching opacity multiplied as he moved. Its hostile mask of dead and staring eyes. The darkness glimmered like a dying torch. Around him, an extinguished phantom glow, peopled with shadowy and misleading shapes. The vague inconscience, dark and measureless cave. His only sunlight was his spirit's flame.
We are starting from the image of the world stare, of these levels of existence, these planes of existence, each with their worlds and their powers and the inner and outer aspect. And that's how we have seen him, sort of mounting up a stairway or a mountainside. But here Aurobindo is showing us that at least on these life levels, the organized worlds are surrounded by a kind of chaos, of darkness and mist, which is quite hostile. This is the dark cave of the inconscient. And it sounds really rather terrible to have to travel through that natal mist from one level to the next level. There's the haze, it's dangerous. There's something moving. It'll give birth at any moment. We don't know through what. This is the astral chaos. The occultists talk about this astral plane which surrounds and gives access to all the other planes.
The mental world or the vital world?
I think we are still on the vital level. He's passing from one life level, the level of the little life, to the greater life. But there's this dangerous passage in between. It's inhabited by demon gods, ghosts, sorceries. And he's not really sure where he's going. As one who walks unguided through strange fields, tending he knows not where. He doesn't know exactly where he's going, and he doesn't know exactly what he's aiming at. And that ground that he's treading on seems to be very unreliable, as it was at the beginning of Canto 3, when he first entered those life worlds. It was very unreliable, unsure, unfirm earth, quaking and swampy. He has to gather all his strength. He journeyed in stone strength, and whatever it is that he's aiming at keeps receding. It's fugitive, it's running away from him, and he can see the light that has been left by his steps behind him is just getting swallowed up, glimmering point getting swallowed up by that immense haze. And there are voices, a bodiless murmur traveled at his side, complaining in the wounded gloom, the darkness feels harmed, hurt by his light. And those voices are complaining about it. The very heart of that darkness is a huge obstruction. And as he moves, he feels that he's being watched. He can't see what is watching him, but there's only this hostile mass of dead and staring eyes. And there's a kind of faint light in the darkness around him, like a torch about to go out. He feels around him in that last perishing glow that it's peopled. There are many shadowy, misleading shapes. He's in the vague, inconscience, dark and measureless cave. And the only sunlight that he's carrying with him is the flame of his own spirit. That is what can guide him further. So I think we'll stop there for today. Next